Welcome, Gunrunner.
The glory days of the video game arcade might be a long way behind us sadly, but they certainly haven't been forgotten, and in this video I'm going to take you back 30 years to those heady days that played such an important part in our youth. The year is 1991, and we are all present at one of the greatest times in coin-op video game history. You won't find any fruit machines, penny pushers or fixed prize machines here. These are the true arcade classics that lit up dingy smoke-filled rooms, sat on horrible stained carpets, and delighted audiences whilst they drained people's pockets of all their spare change. Names like Sega, Atari, Konami, Midway and Capcom have become synonymous with gaming, so it would be no surprise to see them feature heavily in this video. This is where many of today's popular franchises started, multiple innovations took place, and the genres that we know and love today were formed. All these titles play every bit as well today as they did back then, and deserve to be remembered as true classics in the annals of video game history. As we started to roll into the 90s, fighting-based games really started to come into the fore, and we saw a lot less emphasis on the shoot-em-ups that very much defined the 80s. It's fair to say that 1991 was an extremely strong year for arcade games in general, with a wide range of different genres being catered for. It might not have been such a big year for all-time classics, although there were several notable examples, but there was a consistently high standard of titles and a lot of sequels to games that very much fit that billing. So let's take a look at those candidates, shall we? Capcom's epic arcade adventure Strider set the arcades alight on release, wowing audiences with its beautiful backdrops and stunning animation. Set in a dystopian future in the year 2048 where a mysterious dictator known as the Grandmaster rules over the world, you are Hiroi, the youngest ever Super A ranked member of an organisation of high-tech, ninja-like agents known as the Striders. He alone is tasked with the Grandmaster's assassination and begins his mission by infiltrating his base in the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, flipping, rolling, sliding, swinging and slashing as he goes. Whilst the game was known as Crime Fighters II in Japan, Vendetta was renamed for its Western release and marketed as a completely new title, which seems incredibly strange given the success of the first game and the obvious likenesses to its predecessor. At first looks, this seems to just be another generic scrolling beat-em-up, but there are actually a few interesting features worth mentioning. Firstly, you can play with up to 4 players at once, and secondly, all 4 of these controllable characters are actually based on real-life action heroes in the form of Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Wesley Snipes. Endorsed by a fellow named Danny Sullivan, who after a bit of Google foo, I found out is a 7-time winner of the kart Indycar series, this top-down arcade racer is basically a sequel of sorts to the terrific Super Off-Road. Swap out the 4x4 Jeeps for racing cars and the mud for tarmac, and you pretty much have this game in a nutshell. Based on the hugely popular, well in America anyway, Indy 500 series, this is almost like a more modern update of Atari's classic sprint games. I think it's fair to say that Indy Heat isn't a particularly original concept, but it's also fair to say that it's a worthy addition to the genre anyway. I've always been a fan of light gun shooters in the arcades, and made a beeline for them whenever I saw them back in the day. So when I first clapped eyes on Laser Ghost on holiday in Falmouth in Cornwall, I was quite excited. Not just because of the game's genre, but also because of its spooky theme, which made a nice change from the usual military stylings we saw. Aside from its horror movie looks, Laser Ghost also wins points for trying to add variations to the core gameplay. So for starters, it allows 3 people to play at once instead of the usual 2, and it also scrolls in every possible direction too. After the huge success of Final Fight, Capcom went all out to recreate the concept in as many different forms as possible. In the Arthurian-themed Knights of the Round, you play as one of the Knights of the Round Table, including Sir Lancelot, Lord Percival and King Arthur himself. You then head off and try to overthrow the evil King Garibaldi and unite the whole of England. Knights of the Round features some light role-playing elements alongside the action-packed fighting in the form of its level advancement system, which really helped set it apart from the many similar games of the time. Following on from the huge success of Parodius, Konami decided to expand the newly formed Cutiemock genre by creating a vertically scrolling variation. We not only have a similar style of cartoon-like visuals and whimsical music, we also have a very similar bell-based power-up system and screen-stretching end-of-level bosses. Speaking of the visuals, they're even more colourful here with the rich and detailed backdrops upping the ante. Perhaps best of all though, Konami added a simultaneous 2-player mode so you can team up with a friend to take on the wide range of sickly sweet foes. The first Robocop arcade game proved to be a huge hit for data release, so it's hardly a surprise to see them come out with a follow-up, released to coincide with the second movie. This one is pretty much just more of the same, rock-hard run-and-gun action that loosely follows the plot of the film, and perhaps that's why it wasn't quite as successful as the original iteration, as it doesn't really offer up anything new. That's not to say it isn't a good game, as it's undoubtedly one of the best examples of the genre from the time period, and a must-play for those with a penchant for violence. Now here is something you don't see every day, an environmentally friendly beat-em-up. Known as Roka In Japan, this one sees you taking up the role of a muscle-bound RSPCA officer in a mission to rescue a load of animals from the clutches of evil poachers. A hero known simply as the Ranger bears more than a passing resemblance to one Indiana Jones, and can even wield a whip just like the legendary explorer. This is not the only weapon in the game though, as you're able to grab all manner of hardcore firepower and can even get help from some of the animals you rescue too. Following on from the huge popularity of Mad Dog McCree, Who Shot Johnny Rock is another Laserdisc arcade game with movie-like presentation. In this one you are a detective who must make his way around the town collecting clues to solve a crime and take out the many bad guys as you go. You can select which location you want to travel to, must even take a little journey to get there. The whole gangster film noir setting works really well for a game like this, and you could easily be fooled into thinking that the video here was taken from a genuine film. This is a big step up from ALG's earlier titles. In this impressive 3D coin-op, you control an armed chopper through a series of dangerous missions over enemy territory. You do this by using your limited amounts of homing missiles and guns to destroy a host of both air and ground-based targets. You are also required to be pretty adept at flying this big metal cage too, as you often have to squeeze it through tight ravines, climb over mountain ranges and avoid flurries of enemy fire. Steel Talons is a great combination of simulation, strategy and arcade action that makes great use of Atari's revolutionary hard driving arcade board. The original Rolling Thunder was a pretty huge hit for both Namco and Atari games, so it's actually quite surprising that it took them 5 years to come up with a sequel. Once again we have some seriously challenging James Bond inspired run and gun action, but now the original agent has been joined by a female counterpart for some excellent multiplayer action. There are some obvious upgrades to the graphics and sound, but the core gameplay remains very much the same, with the key gimmick of entering and exiting doors to upgrade your weapons remaining intact. After the huge success of the first Dragon's Lair, which very much kicked off a short-lived craze for Laserdisc arcade games, Cinematronics set ace animator Don Bluth to work on a sequel. Ready for release in 1984 and even advertised on TV at the time, the famous industry crash, as well as the high cost of manufacturing the cabinet, saw it abruptly cancelled. It took 7 years for the new owners of Cinematronics, Leyland Corp, to resurrect the game and give it the release it so richly deserved. It's still very much a case of style over substance, but it still impresses as much as it ever did.
Mordrock will place the death ring upon Daphne's finger in marriage, and she will be lost forever in the Time Warp.
The original Chase HQ is an instant classic, and a huge hit for creators Taito. The idea was simple: jump into your turbocharged Porsche, chase down the criminals and smash them off the road. This sequel offers more of the same high-speed action, but with some great new features bolted on. Gone is the Porsche 928, and in its place is a Nissan 300 ZX Turbo. Just as fast and still equipped with nitrous boosts, but somehow a little less stylish and iconic. The biggest addition though is that your co-driver can now pop out the sunroof and fire his gun at the criminals for added automobile carnage. James Cameron's iconic Terminator 2 Judgement Day is still my favourite movie of all time. From the first moment I snuck in to see it, aged 14, I was blown away. When it came to translating the film into video game form, Midway chose to use Operation Wolf for inspiration. You, and a friend if you wish, get to blast your way through level after level of Skynet-controlled Terminators, tanks and drone aircraft. There's also massive bosses, including some seemingly indestructible armoured vehicles, and of course the T-1000 himself. So make sure you look out for the boxes on the battlefield to upgrade your weaponry. Around this time, Konami had become rather stuck in a rut, creating endless new scrolling beat-em-ups using the same engine and hardware that was first seen in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it was a very welcome surprise when they broke that mould for just a brief moment to create a side-scrolling run-and-gun game instead, in the form of Sunset Riders. You take the role of up to 4 cowboys who have been sent to hunt down the wanted outlaw Sir Richard Rose. But first you must dispatch his posse and find his secret hideout. Fun, frantic and utterly fantastic are all great ways to describe this game. This wonderfully unique title from Atari combines a crosshair-based shoot-em-up and Tetris to make an addictive strategy war game for 1 or 2 players. You start the game by building a castle on the coastline, and then you fit it out with some heavy-duty cannons. Ships sail in from the sea, and you use your crosshair to blow them out of the water. But these ships will return fire, and this causes damage to your castle walls that must be repaired at the end of each timed level. You do this by using Tetris-like blocks that you must fit together without leaving a gap. Rampart is a seriously underrated gem. Given how poor the first Street Fighter game was, it's perhaps easy to forget how much of the groundwork it laid for this sequel, which totally revolutionised the fighting game genre and became one of the most popular and highly acclaimed video games of all time. The fact this second Street Fighter game is still being re-released on modern platforms is testament to that. I don't think I really needed to tell you anything about SF2 in fact, I could have just put a picture of a flyer and let you all fill in the gaps, although I do have to confess that I was never a big fan of the game myself. It's fair to say that after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons is the second most popular game to use Konami's famous beat-em-up board. Like the aforementioned title, this one also managed to capture everything that was so great about the original cartoon, with its 4-player comical brawling, roster of well-known characters, and clever cameos. Given how brilliant this arcade game is, it's such a shame that it never made it over to more of the home systems of the time, instead of the Simpsons-related dross we did get, like Bart vs the Space Mutants and Escape from Camp Deadly. This game's premise is pretty simple. Jump in a 4-wheel drive buggy and race against 3 others. Finish in the top 3 and it's on to the next race you go. The tracks are set in different countries all around the world with different course types including snow, desert, dirt and tarmac. Each track is hosted by a comedic character to make things a bit more fun, like Elvis Vegas and Edie, a real mean Dada. Your off-road buggy is also equipped with a gun which you can fire at your fellow racers to slow them down and take the advantage. Road Riot Fourwheel Drive is a superb arcade racer and still one of my favourite coin-ops of all time. The subject of best wrestling game ever comes up quite often in social media, and for me there will only ever be one contender, WWF Wrestlefest. Produced by the same people behind Double Dragon, this game managed to encapsulate everything that was great about wrestling in the early 90s. Firstly, there was the awesome character selection, then you have the varied gameplay modes, where you can choose to enter the Royal Rumble or form a tag team to challenge the Legion of Doom on Saturday night's main event. Then we have finishing moves, commentary, and the ability to add up to 4 players. And that rounds up my look at the greatest arcade games of 1991. Are there any others you can think of that should have made the list? Or do you disagree with any of the entries that I did include? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Mitchell Valentino, Neptune, Sathe Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamerman, Tiago Piera dos Santos Silva, and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to a host of extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights, and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.